Carrie Coon, you had about 17 roles on TV this season. But no, honestly, you played Nora on The Leftovers, Gloria on Fargo. I'm sure you've talked about this ad nauseum the last few days, but I'd like to hear it from you. What's it like to be the lead on two shows at the same time?
Well, of course, it's not like I shot them at the same time. So the fact that they're airing concurrently is really unexpected. I didn't think they'd be coming out the same week. I don't think anybody expected them to come out the same week. I think it was a surprise for FX and HBO that was happening. But I mean, it's extraordinary. My mom keeps saying, what other actress, is doing this? What other mother is, I said, actually, there are quite a few. I said, there's Sarah Paulson, there's Regina King. I mean, we've got a lot of actresses do this, but I feel incredibly privileged. I just feel like it's kind of unbelievable. It kind of feels like a big joke.
But I mean, you have come a long way. I mean, we're quite happy to see you leading two really amazing shows, right?
Thank you so much. I'm glad it's not just my mother.
It's not just your mum. I'm wondering, this is a really weird question, but what do you think Nora and Gloria would think of each other? Do you think they'd get along?
I have to say there is something practical about both of them that they might respect, even if it's a grudging respect. I think Gloria would find some of Nora's outbursts off-putting. I think that sort of expression, that kind of physical expression would be alarming to Gloria, and she would find it impolite. But I think they both have a pretty dry sense of humor, mainly because I do.
Yeah, that helps. That really does. Let's talk about Leftovers for a bit, because that's ending soon. Before you know it, it'll be all over, which is scary and sad and kind of cool. I'd like to know if you can I know you can't say anything about the finale. I've seen everything up to the episode before the finale, so we're all dying to see what happens.
Yeah. I haven't watched the finale or anything past
really?
I haven't watched it yet.
Well, yeah, it's a pretty bloody good season. But if you could say 3 words about the finale, given that you haven't seen it, but you were in it. It's called The Book of Nora, so I'm sure it's kind of slightly about Nora. What 3 words would you use without getting fired?
Oh gosh, okay. Oh, what 3 words would I use? How about Nora caught off guard?
Wow. That is
that's a hyphen in it, so that counts as 1.
Yeah, that's okay, fair enough. That's extremely obtuse, but that's what we would expect for The Leftovers.
Yes,
that's okay.
I don't want to be, Damon and Noah know where I am right now.
They do.
They could kill me.
We don't want that. We want to see you on more TV shows.
I'd like to come back and be on TV.
That would be really cool. So let's talk more about The Leftovers, though. What was it like to do the final scenes that you had on the finale, and what was the feeling like on set?
Oh, it's interesting because with this show, of course, we shot in 3 different locations. So the first crew I had was in New York, the second crew was in Texas, and our third and final crew was in Australia. So in some ways, every season felt new. And also, of course, in season 2, we added a bunch of fantastic new cast members, Regina and Kevin Carroll and Jovan and Jasmine. And so it kind of felt like 3 different television shows. And even in season 3, when we moved from Texas to Australia, because of course we shot a couple of episodes in Texas, or 1.5 or something, even that felt like an entirely different show in a strange way. I mean, it was always us, but it was so dislocating. And I think that was appropriate because certainly, in the script, obviously, we go to Australia. So we were really discovering it while the characters were discovering it. As far as the feeling on set, the crew was coming in for one job. They were coming in for a few months of work on a TV show. They didn't have the history with the show that we had. That said, the Australians were incredible, generous and patient, and we were all so far from home, and they were so loving, and they took such good care of us, and they were so lighthearted in spite of the show's heaviness. For me, and some people think this is a spoiler, but it's not. I was the last person left on set. It was purely a scheduling thing. So I was alone. All the actors had left. So it was very interesting for me because I was alone on the set with this Australian crew. Damon was there and Tom Parada was there and Mimi. And it was sort of a strange anticlimax because it was sort of me and Nora alone at the end, which felt ritualistically right for me to say goodbye to something. And then the Australians kept me up all night, and I almost didn't make my plane because they're just insane, those people, in the best way.
They are
And
really...
I was the only cast member there, so they just wouldn't let me go home. I was blocked from my home, and they literally picked me up and put me in a cab. They picked me up physically and threw me in a car and took me across town so I couldn't go home.
Wow. First of all, I think it's so appropriate that you were left alone as Nora to end the series, or as far as your experience, because that is so appropriate for Nora. She was alone in so many ways and so kind of part of her own little world for a lot of the series, which we'll talk about in a sec. But working in Australia would have been a really interesting thing. Obviously, I am in Australia. I understand where you're coming from. We are a very laid back kind of people. But yeah, did you find that it was a completely different aesthetic when you came here? Because given that there were a lot of outback locations, you were in Melbourne for a lot of it.
Sure.
Yeah, did you find, I mean, I'm sure you're going to say positive things, but how was it different to when you were in Texas and New York?
Well, Texas is really hot and New York was really cold, and I found Melbourne to be just right because I live in Chicago, so 50-degree winter, I can take it. Whatever that is in Celsius, you can translate it for your
It's cold.
I personally, I was a little sad because, you saw that Scott Glenn episode. I'm not in it. No. And they were out in Broken Hill. Is that what it's called?
Beautiful place.
They were out in Broken Hill, but I didn't get to go. So I missed out on a lot of the more interesting locations. But don't worry, I took myself to the Gold Coast on my break, and I dipped my toe into the crocodile water. Because if people don't know, you can't swim up in Queensland because the saltwater crocodiles would eat you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Australia is trying to kill you, they always say. I saw the Great Barrier Reef when I did all those things. But really, it just felt, for me, weirdly, Melbourne felt oddly comfortable because the neighborhood I was staying in, I was in Fitzroy. Nice. It reminded me a lot of Wicker Park in Chicago, and I felt very at home there.
Excellent. Yeah, Melbourne's a great city. It's very, very cosmopolitan. It's very European.
It is. I rode the tram everywhere. We went to the Melbourne International Film Festival. My husband and I saw 14 films at MILF. I keep wanting to call it MILF.
You can call it whatever you like.
We always call it MILF by accident.
That's a whole different film. We'll talk about that when we stop recording, okay? Yeah. So Nora and Kevin, they come to Australia, and they're on this journey. Nora's on a journey because of this elaborate con that these hoaxes, I assume, are trying to pull, and she's trying to uncover it. And Nora seems to be really resolute in trying to uncover them, but then when she's rejected by them, I and many of us found that to be incredibly moving because you can tell how much it really affects her. Can you talk us through that juxtaposition from going from resolute to being completely devastated?
Well, what I love about Damon's writing is that it often feels to me to resemble the way actual people behave, not TV people. And I find that, at least in my own life, I know, we're really good at justifying our behavior as human beings. And we spend a lot of time doing it and a lot of energy. And we are really, really good at lying to ourselves. And therefore, we're lying to other people. We lie to ourselves first, and then we believe it. And then that's what we present to the world, and everybody sort of buys it or doesn't, Yeah. And I think that in that instance, when you're playing it as an actor, you just have to go full into, no, I'm stopping this thing. And then fall into the disappointment of, really both things are true. She's not going to get to stop it if they stop her. But also, we all know that given the opportunity to go see her children, it appears that that's something she's really interested in. And that the only obstacle standing in her way is Kevin. And you can feel from the beginning of the episode, from the beginning of the season, how far apart they are. That it's seemingly okay, but we see them both not operating at full disclosure. Like Kevin's developed a new coping mechanism and he's not talking about it. So Nora's not the only one hiding things when we encounter them. And I think that's untenable in a relationship that's founded originally on honesty anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I was really sick that week again. You can hear it in my voice a little bit if you go back and watch the episode. My voice is really rough. So I was really ill, coughing and tired and maybe some of what you see is just my own act resignation, not being able to go on.
Just wanting to nap. It's that overriding sense of needing to nap. Moving off Leftovers for a bit and moving on to Fargo. How did that come around? Did you just audition for it? Did they approach you? How did you become involved in Fargo?
I had a little Skype meeting with Noah earlier in the year before I left for, I think while I was shooting the early part of Leftovers. So when I was on the way to Australia, we stopped off in Singapore to see family because my brother-in-law's a jazz musician in Singapore. And it was in Singapore in their apartment that that deal got made. And I'd really just had that meeting with Noah. And I knew I was on the list of people they were considering. And to hear Noah tell it, there was a quality in Nora wherein whenever she's seemingly defeated, she always finds a way to get back up and keep going. She's very resilient. And that resilience was a quality that he was really interested in for Gloria because he knew he was going to put her in challenging emotional circumstances, her life falling apart around her. And he needed somebody that kind of had that feeling of hopefulness, actually. Even though Nora and Gloria can be considered quite dark, they're really actually quite tenacious and hopeful, I think, ultimately. And that was important to Noah. And so they made me the offer to do that part. And I would have said yes, to anything at that point with Noah Hawley. And knowing what I knew about Fargo, I would have done anything.
And so how did you approach the character? Did you watch previous seasons to get an understanding of the aesthetic of the show? Did you watch Frances McDormand's performance in the movie from years and years ago?
Paralyzing. You can't. You're already going to be compared, so you can't start off comparing yourself to those people. You have to start fresh. So of course, I'd seen the movie, but the movie's like 20 years old now.
It's so old. Yeah, it's a great movie.
We're so old.
We're so old now.
And then I had seen the first 2 seasons and loved them, but I didn't go back and watch them because, of course, it's an anthology. So I knew that because of Noah's particular genius that this season would be unlike the other 2. So it was almost not useful to go back and do that. And then what was fascinating about working on Fargo is that it's really outside in. It's the most outside in work I've ever done because you put on these giant boots, you put on this stiff uniform, you put on this heavy police belt, and I wasn't even wearing a full police belt, and it was 15 pounds or something. It would just chafe my hips. It was crazy. And you put on a flappy hat, and you walk around in that puffy coat, and you start talking in that dialect, and that's 3/4 of the work. And then, of course, I'm also from the Midwest, so it's something, those people are my people. So there's some essential character of Gloria that I think, understood intuitively. And then you just have good writing. And there's so much information when the writing is specific that everything you need is right in front of you.
Well, given that you've got the costumes, the dialect, the writing, a lot of stuff comes together to create a character. And this is true of any show that you've done, any movie that you've done. But what in particular did you want to bring? What was your priority in bringing something to Gloria that you could say, yeah, that was something that I really wanted to push forward as something that I was contributing?
That's so interesting because I don't know that I ever thought about her specifically that way. You're always the filter for the material. It's always you. And so because of my particular background, I'm from Ohio. I went to school in Wisconsin, which is next door to Minnesota. The dialect is really close. There was something about showing up and doing it where she was really quite whole when we started. Now, the first day always feels like a cartoon because you're speaking in that. I
love that accent.
You're afraid you're going to do it poorly, And I know some Minnesotans who are quite disturbed by anyway the show. But there was something about her. She's a lot like the women I know in many ways. Women that I respect and admire. No judgment for her at all. There's a lot to love about her folksy grace and her tenacity. So I guess boringly, to answer your question, there wasn't. I thought, well, this is the thing I'm gonna dial up. And in fact, with writing that specific, you find that a lot of that stuff happens organically. Like a lot of the humor in the show is really organic because the material leaves room and invites it. And I think we all found that to be true. There's that moment when I stick my hand under the hand dryer in the bathroom. That's the end of that one scene where I meet Winnie, which is a great introduction of character. Yeah. And I love it. But that's all spontaneous. Coming out of the moment. It's not scripted. And a lot of those moments happened for the actors in Fargo because the writing is so good. It's so much easier to do good writing than bad writing.
Yeah, that's probably very true. So I can't imagine what you do when you get a script that's really terrible.
I say no to it.
You say no? I
just don't do it.
It's a lovely luxury now. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. The luxury is just about the only power you get.
Yeah. So you've been traveling a lot. You were in Calgary for that. You're in Melbourne. You've been in Texas. What's happening now? Are you back home? Are you going to have a rest? Are you with your husband Tracy? Are you going back to Broadway? Like, what's going on?
I've seen Tracy about 8 days in the last month, which is not a marriage make. It's kind of a long marriage make because you get to miss someone, but we'll see. Jury's out. I'm actually in LA in a hotel doing press for both. And I'm headed to Chicago tomorrow for a fundraiser for the Steppenwolf Theater. So I'm going home to Chicago for about 24 hours because on Sunday I go to New York. And in New York, I'm doing more press and I forget what else I'm doing. Something. And I have a film I'm starting at the end of May that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, even though I keep accidentally talking about it. So stay tuned. I'm sure that information will be out in the world soon. And it's something I'm really, really excited about and very, very fortunate to be doing.
Wow.
So that's what's coming. I'm doing some film work and maybe spending some more time on film this half of the year. I'm reluctant to commit to a television show right away. I've been doing them kind of straight through without a break.
Yeah.
And I also just want to spend some time in my life and fill the well back up because it's hard to be good at your job if you're exhausted.
True.
And I want to like read books and read the paper and see my family. And I've got these adorable 2-year-old nieces I haven't spent enough time with. And, you know, I want to live my life a little bit and then get back to it.
So I know this question is going to be slightly uncomfortable for you, I know, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So there is talk about Emmy nominations. It's a possibility, right? You have to keep it in an open mind. You're in a really high-profile show like Fargo that does get a lot of love from the Emmys. The Leftovers has been overlooked ridiculously and criminally for the last few years, and hopefully that will change. What would you say if you were in a category with people like Susan Sarandon, Jessica Lange, and Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman? I mean, because that's a possibility. That's what we're predicting at Gold Derby.
Oh my gosh! I mean, I just figure that there's no way to crack that. It's sort of, for me, it's like a foregone conclusion. When I look at the field, I just think, oh well, I'll enjoy watching the Emmys on TV, eating a taco. You know, I'll be eating a taco in my bed during the Emmys.
Nice.
And celebrating genuinely those women, because of course, everything that lifts one of us lifts all of us right now. I mean, it's an extraordinary time to be a woman on television. The work is much more, it's much riskier now. And there's a willingness to see women be grittier and uglier, and without it being a spectacle. It's rooted in character now, just like men have been allowed to do for decades. There's a terribly overlooked performance in the film Christine by Rebecca Hall. It feels like a female taxi driver, you know? And I feel like that role was terribly overlooked during the Academy Awards consideration. She's extraordinary in it. She's an extraordinary actor. And so the more of us I see eligible for these categories, the better it is for everyone. And if I'm in the conversation on Gold Derby, that's very flattering. And I'm sure my parents will be paying close attention to all the stats. I
have a feeling your mum will be like, what other actress is going to be talked about with those people? Like, honestly, it's all Carrie. No, it's true. And you kind of preempted my final question, which really was like, these days, we don't even talk about as much. We don't talk about strong roles for women, how good women are, because it seems so normal now. It's starting to become more normalized. And I guess you really love that because it gives you more opportunities.
Absolutely. And it just also, you know, we all want to see ourselves represented in art. That's all people want. And so as women, we're finally seeing women on TV that look like the women we know. Yeah. Or the women that we are. And I think that's really satisfying. And I just hope we can continue to diversify that body. There's some extraordinary stuff happening now, and I think it's just going to get better for a while.
Yeah, let's hope so. We'll see. Carrie, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck at the Emmys. We hope to see you there.
If not, we can all have tacos in our beds.
Oh, that'd be great. Maybe I might even prefer that. Love tacos.
Yeah, pajamas.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.